Hey y'all. So first off, the last time I did something live, I ended up having someone tell me they couldn't hear me. So the very first thing I'm gonna do is make sure that I've got sound. So hold on. Or if someone is here, if anybody is here yet, let me know if I've got sound while I'm trying to work out how to see if I've got sound. I gotta mute that. Oh, you gotta say something, Christina.
You gotta say something.
Okay, so yes, I've got sound. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming through. First things first, I want to do or give the little housekeeping type things. In the event that my camera dies, which is possible, I will just change the battery. It should not shut down the live. I should be able to just put a new battery in it and keep going. But I don't think that will happen. But just in case, you know, there's that. This will be available in replay. So if you need to leave, if you can't hang out or anything like that, that's perfectly fine. This video will be available on the channel for you to watch as needed. Um, as far as questions were supposed to be pre-submitted, and I do have an amount of questions that I think is going to take me through the whole hour that I planned for this to be. But but if I do run out of questions, I will just scroll back up to see if there's any to see if anyone left questions in the live chat box. If I don't like if I miss your question, or if I don't see it or don't have time to get to it, please do not take it personal. Please do not take it personal. I have to limit this to an hour, partially because I got to go get my kids, partially because I will talk for much longer than an hour if I give myself room to. And so that is why this is scheduled at the time that it is, because I literally have to go. So with that said, again, I am going to go ahead and just dive right into the questions. I'm actually going to do the questions. I'm actually going to answer what I have like on my list. I'm going to answer from the bottom up. Um, so let me open my little tab. Let me get my tab with my questions over here. So the first question that I am going to answer is there was a question submitted of how to choose an author bay, was essentially the question. That question was submitted by one Love Belvin. And so my first answer to that is stop trolling me. But the real answer, I'm messing with her, but I actually think that it's an excellent question. I think that those relationships like that, I think that we all crave them, and I think that we all want them. We all want at least that one person that we feel like we can talk to about our frustrations, not just with the writing, but with the business, with the audience. um, but I think that those relationships have to happen organically, just like any other friendship. The only difference between having an author bay and just having a friend is that you guys both happen to write books. It's the same as if you had a good friend, and if you were a veterinarian and you had a good veterinarian friend, and so you guys were able to talk shop sometimes in addition to the friendship that you already have. But again, I think it's incredibly important to let those relationships happen organically, because you are going to need those people that you can hop in a group chat with when a review gets on your nerves or whatever else. Like, you're definitely going to need that. And so just be cool. Like, just be cool when you see people. Like, if you're on Twitter and you see people talking about things that you like to talk about, just talk to people. Like, just those friendships develop in the same way that any other friendship would. And so just be cool, just be yourself. Well, don't let me reframe that. Don't try to be cool. Like, when I say be cool, I mean just be yourself. Take it easy. Like, it does not have to be forced. It does not have to be something to stress about. Just be yourself and try to be a good friend, and that is going to attract good friends to you. And I know that probably sounds very I don't want to say abstract. My hair is wet. Like if y'all keep looking at my hair, I promise you it's just wet product in my hair. Let me see. I am graying, but I just recently dyed it, so I'm not that gray. Let me see. So the next question is, what surprised you most about the self-publishing process? I would say I would say how supportive the readership is. And it's not that I'm surprised that Black women are supportive because that's not surprising to me at all. And I say Black women because that's my primary audience. That part is not surprising at all. But when I first started, there was kind of this idea that self-publishing was less than. There's still kind of an idea that self-publishing is less than, but I had it in my head just based on some of the experiences that I had, some conversations that I had, that it was going to be hard to get people to support me, that it was going to be hard to get people to take me seriously. And I think that the only people I have a hard time getting to take me seriously are people who are very, very steeped in the idea and the respectability politics that kind of comes along with self-publishing. I mean, with traditional publishing. I've never had an issue getting indie readers to take me seriously or to give my work a chance. Like that's not something that I feel like I've ever really struggled with as I've built my audience. Like that was never one of the things that I thought was the problem. Like with people not wanting to pick me up or not wanting to read me. If anything, it was, because of the type of books that I wrote. Like maybe they were looking um for something more, I guess, gritty or something more adult or something more with like sometimes maybe funnier. I write all over the spectrum and people know that about me now. But when I started, there was no way for them to know that about me. And so I think that took time to build for people to understand that with my work, you really do have to look at the synopsis. You really do have to look at the things that I'm saying about it so that you understand what you're getting into. But that support, like I said, like people kind of made it seem like I was really going to have to fight really, really hard for that. And I think I don't agree. I think that it's a different thing than being able to keep readers engaged and being able to get them to try your work. Like I think that's a different thing than than readers respecting indie enough to invest their time and invest their money into reading those books. I hope that answered that question. I'm not sure how well I stuck to the question, but okay. How do you get out of your head and let your characters do their thing? Was one of the next questions that I got. And I think that you kind of have to get in your head first. And I know. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. I think that anytime when I start writing, I go into the book with a preconceived notion of what that book is going to be. I think that's normal. And for a while, you can just kind of roll with that. You're able to just, you're able to get the words down, you're able to get everything out, and you can just go with that. No issues, no problems. But then once the story really starts to happen, like everything at first, like that first chapter or so, you're really just kind of introducing things. But once the story really starts to happen, there's going to be a shift where the character is like, hey, I know this is what you think or what you want, but that's not me. Like, that's not right. And you're going to be like, no, I know what I'm doing. I got this. I'm the author here. I got it. I know what the audience wants. I know what's going to sell, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You believe that you know better, but I don't think that you ever know better than your characters. I think that there are occasions where I think that there are occasions where you can ignore that voice and it turn out okay, but I think that it will only be just okay if you ignore that voice of your characters. But the way that you actually listen to that voice is by taking a step back, thinking, who is this character? What are their experiences? What are they going through? What is it that is going to get them to the place of these certain actions or these certain occurrences that are going to happen throughout the book? You have to listen to that and let that be kind of your through line to everything else that's going to go on. You can't say, well, I don't want to write I don't know. Like I'm trying to like I'm just I'm okay, I'll use culmination of everything since that's what we're reading in that's what we're reading. That's the book of the month in my Patreon. I'll use culmination of everything. When I first started writing the book, I knew that the hero was going to be, a jerk. For that, trying to keep it clean. I knew that the hero was going to be a jerk, and I knew that my heroine was grieving. I did not know why she was grieving, but I knew that she was grieving. And so there's this moment at the very beginning of the book where she loses her cell phone, and she has to get rescued, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But she goes back for this cell phone in a way that is just not smart. Like there's no other way for me to put it. It's just not smart. And when I was writing it, I didn't understand, and I didn't want to do that because I didn't the hero had already implied that she was stupid. And I did not want to give him another chance to do that. And I was so frustrated that she was creating this other chance for him to do that. And I got stuck. I got stuck because I couldn't figure out how to move the story forward without writing it that way. And I had to let go of that, and I'm glad that I was able to let it go. That was one of those times where you couldn't just outwork it. I had to just like, okay, just go ahead and write it out. And if I need to come back to it, I'll come back to it. But for now, we're just gonna go ahead and write it out. And I was glad that I did because ultimately we end up understanding why why it was so important to her to go back and get that cell phone, and why it really didn't matter if he got a chance to call her stupid again or whatever else. Like that was part of the development that needed to happen. And so I think you have to be able to put aside the idea that you always know best or know better than your characters for your book. You have to just kind of let it flow. And oftentimes, when you have that moment where you think, okay, I'm just going to get it down and I'm just going to come back to it, by the time you get back to it, you've had these other developments in the book that make that moment make more sense. And so there's nothing to go back to. I mean, there's something to go back to, but there's nothing to change when you go back to it, rather. Um, I hope that answers the question. I'm probably going to say that after every one of these, but I hope that actually answers the question. What were your first steps to marketing? At the very, very beginning, and the very, very beginning, there were lots of book groups. There were lots of book groups on Facebook. And while I don't believe that those were ever that effective, I'm not talking about book clubs, I'm talking about groups that were specifically for you to go in and post your book, and everybody was in there posting their book. Book clubs are fabulous because that is word of mouth marketing that there is literally nothing better. I'm talking about something else that that was like the big thing back when I first started, and I still don't believe it was ever that effective. But what I do think was effective was free book giveaways. And I know that makes a lot of authors cringe because they've worked hard to write a book, and they don't who wants to give their work away for free? But I believe that when you're first starting out, one of the most important things that you can do is building your audience. And I think that one of the easiest ways to get people to pick up your book is if they don't have to pay for it. There is something to be said for the kind of devaluing that happens, I think, when someone gets something for free, a lot of times people just collect free books and they never pick it up. And so you have to give them a reason to pick it up, which one of those reasons could potentially be sample Sundays and promos. Sample Sunday, that's when everybody, they get the snippet from their book, 500 or 600 words, maybe more, and they post this moment in their book. We try to avoid spoilers, but they post these moments from their book that gives readers who it gives readers who are already familiar, it gives them like that sneak peek. But for readers who are not familiar with you, it gives them an opportunity to kind of catch a little bit of your voice, see what your writing style is like. It gives them a little bit of the vibe of the couple. It just gives them, it's like a sample. It's exactly in does like a sample. It's literally in the name of it. But I think that those sample Sundays, I think that they're valuable in tandem with stuff like, very discounted promos, free giveaways, stuff like that. You could even have related short stories that you tie into a mailing list, sign up, different things like that. I know that those things sound boring, but I really do think that they work, especially in the very beginning, because the things that I feel like I need to do now to get new readers aren't the things that I needed to do back at the beginning. It's like now, at first, you just need people to know your name. You need people to understand who you are and what you do. But I have an audience now. And so while I am still struggling, honestly, to get in front of new readers, I already have an audience. And so I have that I can rely on for engagement and stuff like that to kind of keep pushing things forward. So in the very beginning though, like I said, free promotions. I know you don't want to give your work away, but you need people's eyes on your book. You need people's eyes on your book. But do not do that until you have at least two books, at least two, hopefully more. Do not do that. Like, do not do that on first book, because the idea is that they're going to read that one for free and then they're going to want to buy your other work. If they don't have if they don't have anything else to turn to, I won't say they're going to forget about you, but it kind of kills some of the momentum, to a point that the first book is honestly, I'm not saying it's not important, but I think that like your second through fifth are maybe more important, because those are going to be the ones that really build that backlist for you and really kind of drive your voice as an author. So people really have an idea of who you are and have an idea of what they're getting when they pick up your work. Let me see. Any publishing tips or strategies for how someone with a pen name or hidden identity can see some success? I've never written under a pen name, so that's my caveat there. I've never written under a pen name, and so I don't have tangible experience to be able to, I can't offer anything. Like I said, I don't have tangible experience in that arena. But what I believe is that if you're doing a thing where no one knows that you're connected to whatever your other name is, I think that you start from scratch. I think that you start from scratch. I think the advice is the same. Get your book in front of people. Like that's going to always be the driving factor. How many people can you get your book in front of? And once it's in front of them, is it good? Is it going to be enough that they want more? Is it going to be enough that they're going to tell their friends about it? Like those are the things to focus on. So I don't think it's so much about the fact that it's a pen name, because no one knows that. To them, you're just a new author, whether you're simply a new author or whether you're starting under a new name. But again, take that with a grain of salt, because I've never written under a pen name. Y'all know my whole freaking government name. So again, take that with a grain of salt. Okay. Um, any advice for breaking into Black paranormal romance? I envision a town like Blackwood where everyone is a mystical creature. Fae, goblins, tree nymphs, shifters. First of all, listen, I love this. I love this so much, but that's just me. when you want to get into those more obscure genres, is what I would call it, thinking about paranormal, um, like the super dark erotica. Um, I'm thinking about like Wonder, which is post-apocalyptic. Anything that kind of deviates from that norm, you have to understand that you are going to be appealing to a smaller audience. And you have to get okay with that. And you should be okay with that. Like, it's fine to appeal to a smaller audience. You do not have to appeal to everyone. The key is doing that thing that you're doing, whatever that thing is, doing it really, really well, so that when people want Black paranormal romance, they know they can always go to you for Black paranormal romance. Not that that's the only thing that they can go to you for, but they know when they're looking for something, if they hear someone else ask for something, they know that you're who they can point at to give to be able to give that to them. Um, Finding that audience, I think, is a little difficult. I do think that finding that audience is difficult because even for me, um, having been writing for almost a decade, my paranormal is just simply, transparently, it is the lowest selling of all of my work, and I'm okay with that because I really really wanted to write it, but it's the lowest selling of all of my work because it has a very specific audience that is significantly smaller than the audience for like my regular contemporary romance and all of that. But I think about like TikTok, for example. I see a lot of people talking about, the like fantasy romance, like the intergalactic space alien romance and stuff like that. All of that is really big. People love it. And so I would recommend, like, if you're comfortable being on camera, or I've even seen people be pretty successful without being on camera, but I would recommend getting on camera. Um, get on there and talk about what you're writing, talk about your work, find other authors who are doing it and look at what hashtags they're using so that you know what hashtags to use to get into that community. um I'm trying to think of what else, but that would really be my advice. You're going to have to get in touch with that community. That's something that I have not done a great job, like, at all. But I would get in touch with that community, finding those hashtags, finding those readers, following those authors who are already talking about those things, and that is going to lead you to where they are. So let me see. I got a question. If you do a free book, will you advise it to be one of your earlier works, especially if you have a good backlist and have grown as a writer? That is a great question, Unoma. That's a great question. I have I have a sketchy relationship with my backlist. I'll say it like that. I am very, very, very hard on my backlist. I'm very hard on my backlist. And so it depends. I think it depends. It depends on how much you think you've grown as a writer. I would recommend not necessarily your most recent work. Like, if it's still selling really, really well, I would not make it free. But I would say put whatever you are most proud of. That's I think that's the way that I would frame that. Whatever book you are most proud of, feel is like most representative of you as an author, that's what I would put forward, but not something that's still selling well, not something that's still selling really, really well, because you don't want to cannibalize your sales. Like, we're still, we're still trying to make our coins. And so, like I said, you don't want to cannibalize your sales, but I would say whatever project you are most proud of that isn't getting a lot of attention anymore, that would be a really, really good project to make free for someone who does already have a backlist. That's a great question. Thank you. Let me see. What is your initial creative development process when you write a new series? So you're assuming a lot. You're assuming I have one, and that's not a great assumption for me personally. It I should have one. I should have one, but I have a problem with the thinking ahead because sometimes if I think too far ahead, I'm going to get bored. And so I have to be very, very careful how much planning in term or how much I guess outlining in terms of the project I do because I will I will start doing something else. But no, no, in seriousness though. I start with the first book. Like if it's a series that's planned, I start with the first book. Typically I kind of know what's happening. I kind of well, not that I know what's happening. I know what I want to do. Like I have a general idea of what I want that first book to be. And I give myself time to flesh that out because it all has to start from there. Like you have to start from book one. You don't start with book two. If it's a 3 book series, you don't start in the middle, you start at the beginning. But even though you do need to kind of have a real, like a more fleshed out idea of what book one is going to have in it, once you have that, you start thinking about, okay, now what's going to happen in book two? What's going to happen in book three? Not necessarily the fine details of it, but you want to have enough in your head that you can layer in details in the first book. So by the time you get to the next book, like if you're not writing them all at once and then releasing them all at once, if you're releasing them one at a time, like most of us do, you're going to want to get readers interested in book two and three while they're still in book one. And so you have to kind of layer in details, let them know like who the other characters are. I'm thinking about like the Love Sisters series, the Wright Brothers series where it was planned as a series. And so I knew that these other books were coming. If you don't know the other books are coming, it's a little more difficult to do that. You kind of have to stick with like anything that you put down in book one, you're gonna have to stick with it because that's the framework that you've created. Even if you weren't intending to create a framework, that's exactly what you did. And so just I think be mindful of, just I think just be mindful of it and kind of let it, like I said, give yourself the opportunity to layer those details in book one. And you can't do that unless you've already thought about what the other books are going to look like. Even if you're not writing it down, which I do recommend that you write it down. Actually, I don't have I had picked up my iPad and took it somewhere else. So I don't have one close to me, but in my author planner that I just released on Monday, momentum shift, go get it if you're into stuff like that. But anyway, there is a series planner in there where you can kind of think through, like, and there's not a lot of room on the page because it's not about you fully fleshing out every single thing. It's about you jotting down notes, like little things, just so that you have those kind of in the back of your mind as you're moving through your process. um okay, I need to give me a second. Okay. um how do you overcome the stress of writing hot sex scenes? And you should know that hot, the second hot is in all caps. So like hot sex scenes. And if you're watching, I am not entirely sure what you mean by stress, but I think you mean, I'm going to guesstimate that you're referring to, I guess, kind of the pressure for it to be hot, for it to be unique, for it to work for the characters, for everything to make sense, for there to not be too many hands, unless you're writing that paranormal, there might be some extra hands involved, but like that's what I think you mean. And I think that if that's the case, you got to let that go. I think that you got to let that go. I think that you have to step back and visualize and let the characters be. Like, what is this couple's chemistry? What is their vibe separately? What are their experiences that they're bringing into this intimate scene with each other? Especially that first one, especially that first one, is usually more difficult to write than the others because you're setting the tone for what all their intimate scenes are going to look like. And so there's that pressure to to make it perfect, to make it right, to be able to bring all of these different things into it. But it has to be about what works for the characters. So my recommendation would be, before you've even come to sit at the computer, to visualize it and just let it flow in your mind as much as you can. But when you get to the computer, you're going to have some flexibility, because it may not go like what you had in your head, because you're in your head. You're like, and the characters are the characters. And so once you get there, it might come off your fingertips a little. That is an interesting line to say in this context. But anyway, it's yes, it may not actually, the way that it was in your head may not be what actually ends up on the page. And so you have to give yourself that room and give yourself that flexibility to just let it flow, and not be so rigid on what happened in your head. I think that's what you mean. If not, like, inbox me or something, and I'll try to see if I can give a better answer than that, if that is not what you meant by stress. um let me see. What is the best way to find a writing mentor in the genre that I want to publish? um I do not have a good answer for this. This A mentor is something that I desperately, desperately wanted in the early days of my writing. And I can't say that I don't still want that. There are so many times when I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. And I wish that there was someone that I could, just kind of look up to, or someone whose, I guess, footsteps I could really follow in, just in terms of an indie writing career. But I don't. And I don't want anyone else to feel like that. And that's why I have the YouTube channel. That's why I made the planner. That's why I do things like this, because I know how difficult it is to feel like you don't have that, to feel like there's questions that you have and you don't know who to ask. You don't know where to go to find the information that you're looking for. And so I try to give as much information as I can. But in terms of finding a mentor, you're going to have to look around. You're going to have some patience. You are going to have to, you're going to have to be prepared to hear no. You're going to have to be prepared to hear no, because what I think is that a lot of the people who are making a big enough waves in whatever genre it is that you want to write, or the people who are doing the things that you admire, they probably don't have time to take on what you're probably looking for. And that's the difficulty. That's the difficulty in it. That's the difficulty in it, because writing, as much as you need community, the writing itself is such a solitary process. It's not like we're building a house, and I'm thinking about our electrician. He had apprentices with him. He had two apprentices with him. But when he was wiring our house, there were very tangible things that he could show them. This is how I'm doing this. And then they, for the next one, they could do it. And so this is how he's able to teach. That doesn't quite exist in writing. Like, it has to be a very one on one thing. It has to be something that whoever you're looking whoever you're looking to has the time to take away from their own projects and their own family, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in order to be able to do that for you. And people only have a certain bandwidth for that. And that's something that I don't know that I really understood that until later, like how difficult it is in order to carve out the time for that, especially for more than one person. I did, at the end of last year, I had a moment where I really wanted to be able to do some direct mentoring. And I was scared to ask. I knew who I wanted to ask, and I was scared to ask her, because I didn't want it to be a thing of like, girl, who you think you are? Her thinking that of me, like, what makes you think I would want that? What makes you think you're qualified to do that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But luckily she reached out to me. She asked me. And so and so that worked. But I think that I think that it took time to be able to build to something like that. I think it took even like at least a little bit of a relationship there in order to build to something like that. But even then, I still think that it's kind of a difficult thing. But you like reach out, because you never know, that you may already be on their radar. Like if you're already writing, if you're already publishing, you may already be on their radar. So don't be afraid to reach out, but also don't be afraid to hear no and not take it personally, because it's honestly probably not personal. They probably just don't have the time. So, stick your foot out there, girl. Stick your toes in the water. Let me see. For people who aren't comfortable with promotion, what are some low effort but high impact tips, if such a thing exists, for getting your book noticed? Um, you're going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable is the first is the first thing that comes to mind for that, because you're going to have to do the promotion. You're going to have to do the promotion. I don't know that low effort high impact really um well, there is something there is something, but I think that high effort high impact is usually the way that it goes. But I think that talking about your book goes a very long way. I think that publicly talking about your book goes a very long way, because that is how people know that you exist. That is how people know that your book is coming, and that is how people know what to expect. They know, what kind of characters it's going to be, what kind of vibe it's going to be, and they can say, hey, I like stuff, I like black rom-coms with, I don't know, a wacky heroine and a grumpy hero. I love that. And so that might put your book on their radar. And that leads into the very vital word of mouth, because if they've seen you talking about your book and they pick it up because they saw you talking about it and they love it, they're going to talk about it and they're going to tell people about it, which, like I said, like that is the highest what's the word, conversion rate. That is the highest conversion rate marketing that you can get, is other people who loved your work talking about your work. And so I would say, for the low effort, even though I want you to not rely on that, but the best low effort thing that you can do is talking about your book publicly. And that's not to say that you're giving spoilers, telling all your details or anything like that, but talking about your book, like that is how you get it. That's how you get people to know what you're doing. And I say that, but I actually don't do this a lot. I wish I did it more. I used to do it more, but now I think I'm so I've gotten so paranoid about thinking that I don't know that. Remember that thing I talked about how the characters like will just do stuff. I think that I've gotten so paranoid about that I don't want to tell the public anything about it, and then the characters be like, that wasn't me, that was you. That that have nothing to do with me. I never heard sorry to this man. I do not want that to happen, and so I kind of pull back a bit until I've gotten often to like a certain length before I'll publicly talk about the book, because I don't want to tell y'all stuff and then it's wrong. Let me see. Regarding series, do you go into it having an idea of all initial books it'll be comprised of, or have some spun off unexpectedly? That's kind of similar to the earlier question about planning for series. But yeah, like when it comes to like the Love Sisters, that's three books around sisters. It's three books around sisters. It's three books around sisters. And so I know I'm going to be starting with one of them. Okay, you started with one. What's happening in the other two girls' books? What are their personality types like? What are their dating lives like? What are their jobs? What do they have going on? Just getting getting my head wrapped around all these different things around about the other characters, so that as I'm working through that first book, I can weave all of that stuff in. And so it really helps it feel cohesive, especially if the three books have very different vibes, which I have a thing for apparently I have a thing for writing books about siblings where each book has its own unique vibe because each sibling is their own unique person. And so the books will feel different because the siblings are different. And so you want there to be, even though you have these distinctive works, you want there to be that through line that really connects outside of you just saying, yeah, this is a series. It's like, yeah, this is a series, but how do these books have anything to do with each other? Well, it's because back in book one, you talked about this that, gets expanded on in book two, and you talk about this that gets expanded on in book three, and so on and so forth. Now, with books like the Heights, like the Heights, for example, the Serendipitous Love books, the Equilibrium series books. I never know what is going to be happening next, and so I'm at a point now where I just write and cross my fingers and write and hope that I'm going to like that if I put something down and then a character comes to me where I want to come back to this series, I haven't done something that completely contradicts that because I can't just not write the book. Like that's not going to happen. So now I have to figure out how to how to make this completely contradictory element actually work for what it is I'm trying to accomplish with the series. Let me see. Do you believe writers write every day? Why or why not? Y'all already know what I'm about to say. And when I say it, you're going to be mad. But yes, I do believe that writers write every day, but I believe that that has some caveats. Um, you're not always writing a book. Sometimes you just finished the book, or sometimes you haven't yet started your next project. And so, of course, you're not going to be writing, and there's no reason to push yourself to try to write every day. During those times, you have marketing to do, you have editing to do, you have planning to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, maybe you're not writing during that time because you're doing the finishing work, or you're doing the prep work for another project, or you're just taking a break, you're on vacation, which is very valid and you should do. But if you have decided that you're writing a book, you've started the book and you want to publish this book, um yes, you should be writing every day unless you legitimately cannot. And when I say legitimately cannot, that's not a thing of, so let me say it like this. I think that oftentimes we what we interpret as writer's block is not actually writer's block. I actually did a whole video about this, but I think that there are outside things that influence us more than we would like. And it's to a point where you can't focus enough to get anything down. And we often call that writer's block when it's like, no, you don't have a writer's block. You're hungry. You don't have writer's block. Your kid is getting bullied at school. You don't have writer's block. You can't figure out why your eye has been twitching for the past week. Like there's stuff going on with you, and you're going to have to give that stuff some attention. I know a lot of times it's easier to just ignore the stuff, but you're not going to be able to focus on your writing and write in any meaningful type of way until you've addressed some of that stuff. Now, sometimes stuff is ongoing, and I'm not saying that, you don't write until it's figured out, but I am saying that you give yourself that grace and don't call that writer's block, because it's not, because that, I feel like that minimizes the very real things that we go through as humans. Like, again, you don't have writer's block, there's a tornado warning in your area. Like there's stuff going on, like, and it's okay if you can't, if you can't. But with that said, if you just don't feel like it, do you feel like writing a book? Like, is that really, like, do you really feel like writing a book? And I'm not saying that to be mean. Like, I'm like, honestly, do you feel like writing a book at all? Because you're gonna have to push through some don't feel like it. Now, I'm not like, if your mental health is not together, if your physical health is not together, if you've got other outside stressors, happening, that's one thing. But that I don't feel like it, or, you know, I'm bored with my work, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you're going to have to push through that. Maybe you're not writing the book that you should be writing. Maybe you've, tried to force some sort of element that your characters don't want to be forced. And so maybe that's something that you're going to have to go back and address. But you're going to have to push through that. Like, there's often going to be those times when you have to kind of force yourself to the computer. And maybe you're not even actively writing in your doc, but like maybe you need to write a short, a palette cleanser or something like that. But barring legitimate outside circumstances, yes, I do think you should be writing every day as a writer. So there's that. Okay. And the last question that I have on my little document is, what are the most important elements to making your setting pop as much as the characters do? So I think that um one of the best things that you can do is have your setting very, very clear in your head. Very clear in your head. You're going to, in your mental picture, you're going to fill in all kinds of details. What colors are the bricks on the buildings? Is is the road full of potholes? Is the road like, have they freshly painted the lines? Is the sidewalk raggedy? Is there grass growing up through the cracks? All these different things, you want to have that very, very clear in your head for whatever setting you're in. Are you in, a newly built suburban development? Are you in a town that has been around since the 1800s? Like, and there's this building that's never been renovated. Like, these things like that, those are things that you want to really get a very good mental picture of, so that as you're writing, you're able to kind of naturally weave in those elements. The smell of, Mr. Johnson barbecuing a couple blocks over. It always, it always travels over, and it always makes you hungry, or it always makes you sick to your stomach. Maybe you're vegan, or maybe your character is vegan and it makes him sick to his stomach, but he can't say nothing because because Mr. Johnson grew up with his daddy, and Mr. Johnson will be like, nah, I'm gonna tell your daddy, and your daddy gonna go upside your head. Like those little things matter, and they build on everything, and they pull everything together. One resource that I can recommend is the setting thesaurus. I cannot remember the author's name right now, but they have several of them. I think it's a duo. But they have, the emotion thesaurus. There's a lot of them. There's like 5 or 6 different ones, but they have setting thesauruses as well. And what this helps with is you knowing the names of these things, because it's very hard to describe something if you don't know the proper name for it, because the proper name for it is how other people are going to know what it is you're trying to describe for these different settings. There's a rural, I can't ever say that word, rural. There's one for those type of settings. I'm not gonna try to say the word again. And then there's an urban setting thesaurus, which I did use very heavily when I was writing like the Heights books, because I've never lived in a big city before. I've been to big cities, but I've never lived in a big city before. And so sometimes there would be things that I wouldn't necessarily know what the name of it was, like this type of business, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just would not know what to call it. And it's very helpful with helping you kind of map out that mental picture for you, so that so that you're able to describe what's happening around you. Another thing that you can do is, when you're driving around in your city, pay attention to the things that make it feel like home for you. Not even necessarily things that you like about it, but the things where I'm back home. My city has a ton of freaking roundabouts, those damn traffic circles. I hate those things, and they won't stop popping up every time I look up. Every time I go to an area of my city where I have not been in a minute, there's a freaking roundabout there. I hate those things, but I know that I'm home. When I see those roundabouts, I know that I'm home. And so that is one thing that you can do, like thinking about the things in your city that makes it feel like home. And not necessarily to say that those should be present in your work, but it just helps you kind of pay more attention. It helps you with it's the mental exercise of it, so that when you're thinking through how to do it in your work, it kind of gives you just kind of that mental cue that you can look for. Also paying attention in movies, when you see certain settings and it's clear that that this setting is meaningful. What is it about that setting that clues you into exactly what you're getting into? Like, is it spooky? Is it really foggy because it's a city that's high altitude, so it's high up in the mountains or something like that. So there's often a lot of dense fog, stuff like that. Just paying attention to it, paying attention to the things that cue you in that the setting is important, so that when you go into your work, okay, this is what stood out to me, like this is what clued me in about this. So how can I bring that into the work with me? And so where did it go? There was another question. When you sit to write, do you already have an idea of which of your previous characters will make cameos, not necessarily in the same series? I do not, and I hate it. I hate it. Well, I won't say that I don't. Sometimes I do, because sometimes, like a certain setting will just call for it. Like, I know, like the book that I'm writing now is set in Vegas, and so I know that at any time, any of the other characters in the books that I've set in Vegas, I know that they might make an appearance. It's these other folks that could possibly pop up because they're on a trip, or because they're on TV, or whatever other reason. Those are the ones that I never really know, but my mind is always open for the possibility of it. Like, my mind is always open for the chance of it, because I know how much, like, people who are really well versed with my catalog, they love seeing, those check-ins from those other characters, especially if we get to see the couple together or something like that, or if there gets to be like a mention of the couple. And so I try to keep my mind open for it, but it is also very frustrating, because anything that I put down in this book over here, if I ever come back to something dealing with them, it's like you're creating a whole what's the word? Canon. You're creating canon for all these different characters. And so anytime you do another check-in, you're creating another piece of canon that now you have to keep up with every single time. And so that's why it frustrates me so much. Um, Let me see. How do you avoid overthinking your writing? Babe. I wish I had an answer for that. I wish I had an answer for that. There is no answer for it. There is no answer for it. Like, it's not about avoiding the overthinking, I think it's about being able to see it when you're doing it, so that you can say, hey, this is what's happening here. This is why I can't move forward, or this is why I think people are going to think this thing is stupid, or this is why, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the last book that I published ended on a cliffhanger. And this is the first time I've ever really done that. Like, I kind of lightly did it in my paranormal series, but that is different than this. Like, this ended on a for real cliffhanger. And so when it was time to open the next book, I was so nervous, because I was so in my head about, well, people are going to think this is stupid. People are going to think this is silly. They're going to have figured this out, up front, and they're going to be wondering why are you taking so long to tell this, and why are you taking so long to tell that? And I just had all this stuff built up in my head about it, but I wrote it. I wrote it, and I still thought those things after I wrote it. Like, writing it and getting it out did not, like, that didn't help it. But then I sent it to my betas, because I sent to my betas as I'm writing. My pace lately has been 2 or 3 chapters at a time. But I sent it to my betas, and everybody was shocked by the things that I just knew they would already know. And they were entertained like the whole time. And they loved, what I had done. And they were interested, and just et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all this stuff that I had built up in my head, it just wasn't true. It just wasn't true. But I don't know how to not do it. I do not know how to not do it. But I know when I'm doing it, I know it. And knowing it and recognizing it and naming it, that is overthinking. That is, being able to name it and say it. That helps me be able to move past it and still be able to produce and still be able to perform as necessary. And so, hopefully that actually helps. Um, Let me see. I always leave room for on the spot interpretation. My outline is never said so. Absolutely, absolutely. I actually just the other day, again with the again with the Monument Shift Planner, but there's an area in there that is a chapter outline, and it's tied to a certain project, and there is a single line for each chapter has a single line available for you to write down in there, and I filled mine out. I don't think it was yesterday. It may have been the day before yesterday. I can't remember when it was, but I filled mine out, and I put one sentence for what I think that chapter is going to be. One sentence. That one sentence helps me set my framework, which is important because that gives me pacing, that helps me kind of move forward in my brain with what I think, how I think it's going to end, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it does not give me room to over to do too many details, and it does not give me room. Remember earlier I was like, sometimes I get bored. Like if I think through it too much, I'll get bored. Like that's a perfect amount. You get one sentence. You can say how many words you think the chapter might be, if that's important to you. You can say whose point of view you think the chapter is going to be from, if that's important to you. But you get one line, however many sentences, maybe some short sentences, but you get one line to write what you think is going to happen. And I think like that, for me personally, that works really, really well. Let me see. I didn't realize there was a setting thesaurus. I have the emotion thesaurus. This, yes, really, really good. Those were the hardest to get used to when I moved to Dallas. I can't. The city that I live in is like a tenth of the size of Dallas. I cannot imagine having to navigate those every single day in a huge city, girl. Bless up, because um the engineer in me can't hear this, Christina. Roundabouts are good. Now I will say, the one good thing that I will say about the roundabouts is that they do, or they have relieved traffic in the areas where they are. But so many people don't know how to use them or get confused in them. Like I literally almost had an accident yesterday because somebody came from the I wish that they came with like directions. Like if there was like a video that went out to like everybody in the city or something like that every time a new one went up, so that everybody knew how to use it. Maybe. Let me see. You mentioned the setting and emotion thesaurus. Are there other craft books you keep in rotation? My apologies if you answered this already. I joined late. No, nobody has asked this, but those are the only craft things that I keep, that I kind of keep. As a matter of fact, let me go look at my Kindle so I can tell you exactly which ones I have. Because I couldn't remember the name of all of them, and there's several. So let me see. Okay. Everything wants to pop up now that I've picked up my phone. So I'm just gonna search thesaurus. Let's see. They're showing me results from Kindle. I want results from my library. Okay, the emotion thesaurus, the emotional wound thesaurus, the negative trait thesaurus, the occupation thesaurus, the positive trait thesaurus, the rural setting See that word, the rural setting thesaurus and the urban setting thesaurus. And I also have a book called Master List for Writers by Bren Donovan. The authors for the other ones is Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi, I think. But anyway, those are the authors for those. But you just type emotion thesaurus in the thing, and I'll probably put like some links or something. I'll probably put some links. But also the master list for writers. That there was one thing that was super helpful. Let me see. What was it that I settings? Settings. When I was thinking about settings, it has lists of, let me see, uh, like it has this list of 100 potentially interesting settings for scenes: a coffee house, a bar, a church service, a funeral, a wedding, a graduation ceremony, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to list them all off, but something like this is just helpful for opening up your mind, because there's a lot of things that if you don't know, you just don't know. And so something like that is really helpful for just opening up your mind. Like you're not using this as like it's not a manual, that you follow step by step. It's a brainstorming tool more than anything. Just and like the next thing after this, sounds for different settings, so things to kind of clue you in, like to like those mental cues again for different things that your characters might notice while they're in certain places, which the setting thesaurus actually does a really really good job with that too. Sounds, smells, like certain sights, certain things that might be happening. Really really like really really awesome resource. And what you'll discover is the more you write, you don't use them as often, because like I can't, like I've you see that I had to look up which ones I actually have, because over time that will just get built into like it almost maps itself into your brain, so that over time you don't have to always go back to your reference. These things kind of come more naturally to you as you're writing. So it is 201. It's 201, and I said I was only gonna do an hour. And actually my throat hurts. I need to drink some more water or some tea or something like that. So it is time. It's time for us to end. It's time for us to end. Thank you guys so much for coming to kick it with me. For you guys that had, that submitted questions earlier, and for you guys that have kept the chat engaging, I appreciate you so much. I know this was really last minute. It actually I had to push myself. Speaking of that whole, when we were talking about the promotion thing, speaking of like needing to push yourself, I've been thinking about doing this all week long, all week long at the time, because this is a momentum shift thing, right? Like this all ties into that. And so when I announced the planner, I was supposed to announce this too. And I didn't, because I was scared, because it's like, what if nobody cares? What if nobody thinks I know what I'm talking about? Just on and on and on and on and on. And so I didn't post about it. And it would have been better if I had posted about it. More people would know about it. I could have gotten more questions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I did it anyway. I was scared, but here we are. I did it anyway. And so, we're always learning, we're always growing. The momentum shift planner is actually something that I initially I've been thinking through this for a while, but I had not ever just sat down and took the time to really do it. I've always been a planner girl. And so I would just try to make planners work for me, but they wouldn't exactly work for me. And I would see stuff like planners for nurses, planners for teachers, and stuff like that, that really kind of spoke to exactly what those occupations needed. But I wasn't really seeing anything that really, really worked for me as a writer. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to make my own. And it was going to be just a personal thing. But then the fact that I had been wanting to do a planner, like that kind of connected. And it was like, all right, let's go ahead and do this. And so I did. And so, like I said, like this is me kind of leaning into that stuff, more into kind of like the resources and stuff like that for authors, because these are all things that that I wanted and that I wish I had. So there's that. I'm sorry. Like I told y'all, I will ramble. Um, Let me see. Thank you guys for coming. Shanice and my fellow Christina, Kiona, Shanice, can we do this again sooner? Am I being greedy? No, we can definitely do this again soon. I'm thinking about maybe doing something like this, maybe once a month or so. Um, I have to talk myself into it. I have to talk myself into it, and hopefully, it would consistently get questions and stuff, so that I could continue to make it to make it actually helpful. Maybe if I only do like 30 minutes or something like that, maybe I'll get enough questions. But anyway, I gotta get ready to go pick up my kids from school, so I am going to go ahead and let this go. As always, thank you guys for kicking it with me. Thank you guys for your support, and I'll holla. Bye.